Yeshiva World.
Thank you, John, for being here and for being a friend and for those very kind words. And by the way, I just wish you were the mayor of New York these days. John, thank you for running, and I sure hope you stay involved. I'm going to talk a lot about, or maybe I'll talk a little bit about global politics, presidential politics, and I do that all the time. But first, I want to start off by just saying something about High Lifeline, because that's why we're here. Yes, I'm here to talk about the campaign, but High Lifeline is why we're all really here. And Harry, thank you for all you have done throughout the years to make this tremendous organization a success. You know, we think about 300 million Americans and 7 billion people in the world, but life often comes down to one person, to one family, to what a community can do in a time of crisis for that community. And that's what High Lifeline has done for so many years, for so many thousands of families, not just with the summer camps, but with relationships with hospitals, with financial help, supporting families. And I happen to have had the honor of meeting your main speaker. And I'm sure her story will touch your hearts, because that's what High Lifeline has always done. So the rabbi, scholar, and all of you, thank you for doing this. Thank you for what you do, one family at a time. And you know, this is a great group of people who work hard and strive and succeed, but you never know when it could be your family. And some of you may have heard, but it was just about 4 weeks ago when my 30-year-old son-in-law, just finishing his third year of internship as a orthopedic surgeon, an athlete who played sports at Yale and worked out every day, had a stroke out of nowhere, a life-threatening stroke. And thanks to a lot of prayers, and we have people from the Western Wall to the Vatican preparing for our son-in-law, he is so far making a miraculous recovery. But I'll tell you, it showed me firsthand what it means to have a community, an organization, people behind you in that time of need. You never know when it might happen. Thank you for supporting High Lifeline. And thank you, Rabbi Scholar, and everyone, for what you do. And Harry, thank you again for your kind words earlier. And Amin, thank you for taking up the slack. The next generation takes control. And Harry, I have to tell you, I've always been impressed with you, but I don't know how you got such two handsome sons as Amin and Raymond. And talk about God works miracles. Look at how handsome Harry's sons are. But,
here's my reason.
That explains it all.
They got a pretty mother.
That explains it all. But really, thank you for supporting High Lifeline. Harry, Amin, Raymond, the whole family, thank you for all you do for the community. And all of you, thank you for being a part of this tremendous Sephardic community that, not just in time of need, but always pulls together to help those who might need a little more support. As Harry mentioned, and as John mentioned, I made a decision to run for president. And it wasn't a decision I made lightly. I had thought about it in the past. I did have the honor to lead this state for 12 years. And why did I finally say this is the time? Well, you turn on the TV, you go on the internet, you look at the news, and you think it can't get any worse. And then it seems every day somehow it does get worse. And people throw up their hands and think, well, there's nothing you can do. The government is too big to manage. Politics is too divisive to control. And I look at it and I say, no, it's not. This is still America. This is still a unique country that has attracted people from every corner of the world because we have represented freedom and opportunity for generations, including my 4 grandparents who all came here from across the world. And we can do that again. But there are a number of things we have to do. First, we have to have a candidate in my party who can actually win the election. Doesn't matter how good you think you're going to be, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If you can't win the election, you're never going to have the chance to lead the country. And I'll tell you, as a Republican, if you can win in New York, as the song goes, you can win anywhere. And I'm telling you, if I have the opportunity, I will win the election next November. part is it's not just about winning, because that's not the end, that's the beginning. Once you've won, I've seen too many people get elected and go, what do we do now? You know, oh wow, this is tremendous, but I'm not sure what's going to happen next. Well, I'll tell you something. There is no government other than the federal government that is bigger, more complex, more difficult, and sadly, at times, more corrupt to deal with than the state of New York. And I didn't just manage New York State's government, I changed it from one direction to another. And I'm just going to tell you 2 or 3 things. When I took office, people don't remember, New York State was the most dangerous state in America, bar none. And yes, we had great policing under Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg, but we changed over 120 criminal justice laws so that when you caught a criminal, you could convict the criminal, sentence the criminal, and keep them away so that the people could be safe. And we went from being the most dangerous state to the 4th safest in America when I left office. You know, people said, and what we have to do in Washington is let people know that it's not about being dependent on government. It's about having the pride and self-worth that comes from taking that first job, earning a paycheck, and being a part of the American dream. And just a couple of more statistics. When I took office, 1 in 11 of every man, woman, and child in the state of New York was on welfare. Think about that. People forget this. Not Social Security or Medicaid or disability. 1 in 11 of every man, woman, and child from the tip of Long Island to the shores of Lake Erie was on welfare because we had created a system of big government paternalism that trapped people in dependency. Well, to make a long story short, when I left, we had over 1 million fewer people on welfare. We had almost 700,000 more private sector jobs. Our unemployment rate was 4.3%, the lowest ever. And I know that we can do it in Washington too. End dependency, reduce the tax burden, reduce its intrusiveness, and create opportunity instead of dependency. We did it in New York. I can do it in Washington. And just one last point. Most of you know, I was governor on September 11th. And I thought we learned a tragic lesson on September 11th that we would never forget. That even though radical Islam was an ocean and thousands of miles away, it posed then and it poses a threat to us here today. And it is just absurd that when we see ISIS growing more powerful, when we see ISIS radicalizing Americans here to attack other Americans, that we don't understand. We don't need a $1 trillion, decade-long war. We don't need hundreds of thousands of troops on the ground, but we need to destroy ISIS, their training camps, their recruitment centers, their social media hubs, their weapons that they could use to attack us here, over there, before they have the chance to attack us here again. And we need an administration that will empower the forces already on the ground, like the Peshmerga and the Sunni, the Anbar Sunni on our side, to destroy ISIS, and if necessary, send in our troops. And you look at radical Islam, and you look at world terrorism that just seems to get worse every day. Last week, our administration again said the #1 state sponsor of terror is the government of Iran. At the same time, they are this close to negotiating and signing a deal that will let that #1 sponsor of state terror have a path to a nuclear weapon. That is an absolute disgrace. It poses an enormous threat to us. It poses an existential threat to Israel. And I'll tell you, if I have the chance to lead this country, Iran is never going to have a nuclear weapon. It is not going to happen. We were going to make sure of 2 things. Our allies trust us. And that includes Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel comes to America. He's not going to have any problem with the doors to the Oval Office open and sitting down whenever he wants. They are our frontline strategic partner. They are the only democracy within hundreds, if not thousands of miles They are the ones on the front line fighting Islamic terror. And the United States, and I pledge any administration I lead will always be right with Israel time and again. Now, I just want to say one other thing. It's not just Israel. We are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism in Europe, certainly in the Middle East, but also in America. And the idea that 60 years after the worst example of inhumanity ever, the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, could again be rearing its ugly head, and our government and our leaders do not speak up and shout it down every step of the way, is a disgrace. And let me just give you one example of that. The whole concept on universities and in community groups to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. Think about it for a minute. We're on the verge of lifting sanctions with Iran, a thug state that's the #1 sponsor of state terror. We have no problems trading with oligarchies like Russia. We have no problems dealing with dictatorships who may be on our side like Saudi Arabia or the Emirates. But we're going to boycott the only democracy that has respect for freedom of religion, respect for human rights, respect for the rule of law in the entire Middle East. The boycott, divest, and sanction movement is not a human rights movement. It is an anti-Semitic movement, and it must be shouted down and stopped wherever it is. Quite simply, I know we have to change the direction of our government. It is headed in the wrong direction towards divisiveness, dependency, the powers in Washington believing they can dictate every element of our life, from how we get our health care, to how we educate every kid, to how we run our businesses. People say government is too big, you can't change it. Well, I know I can. I know if I have the opportunity, I know that if I lead this country, we will. This is still America. You're still Americans. We still understand we have a common future, a common destiny, and with the right leadership, I can guarantee you, Harry, that your kids and their kids are going to live the next century in the greatest century and the best country the world has ever known. Let me just close. Hazak, Hazak, V'nit Hazek. Be strong. Be strong. Give your strength to others. There is nothing America can't accomplish when we stand together. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Jeff, the governor's gonna take 2 or 3 maximum questions. If anybody would like to ask him something about his campaign, about how he plans to get to the White House, or any other subject, please.
And forgive me if I damage your eardrums, but I get a little passionate about this stuff, and if you can't have passion, you shouldn't be running.
Who's going to be your vice president? Harry?
I want Harry, but the Constitution says you can't have 2 from the same state, so he'd have to move his residency to Deal, and then we'd talk about it. I'll worry about the nomination first, and then we'll talk about that. Any other questions?
Anybody have any questions for the governor?
Well, again,
Don't be shy, please.
Harry,
Yes.
I'm liable to blow the answer. Stop pushing him here. I'm happy.
I doubt that very highly, Governor. And you're going to be under a lot more heat during the next few months than you are today in this little room.
I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you all. And congratulations to High Lifeline.